What's the worst thing you've seen at a wedding? Husband and I used to play in a ceilidh band, and we played for many weddings. At one truly memorable one, the bride and groom were already very drunk when we arrived to set up, and they pretty much disappeared for the evening. Their two families sat on opposite sides of the marquee with their backs to each other all night, and nobody from one side spoke to the other. Not a soul danced all evening, so we just played our music amongst ourselves. Goodness knows what the history was between them. At the end of the night, the best man tried to leave without paying us, so our dance caller had to chase him across a field in the dark to get our fee off him. I've often wondered how long that marriage lasted. Went to a wedding where everything went well. Got to the reception and the alcohol was flowing. My husband and I drank and got on the dance floor. The groom's side were very proper while the bride's side were quite the opposite. Everyone is dancing when all of a sudden the cousin of the bride grabs the mic and says, "This song is dedicated to your wedding night." He motions for everyone to clear the dance floor and cues the DJ. Madonna's "Justify My Love" starts playing as the cousin starts crawling and rolling on the floor while lip-syncing. It was easily the most awkward moment while everyone stood there watching his overly sexual performance. The song finally ends and it's dead silence. I will never forget this moment. The bride's grandfather died while she was walking down the aisle. The ambulance was there in less than 5 minutes, but the paramedics called it after resuscitation failed. They removed the body and, after a brief period of consultation and people pulling themselves together, the wedding ceremony went ahead. No exaggeration, the time between Granddad hitting the floor and the ceremony restarting was less than 45 minutes. I did not attend the reception, but I heard from others that it was a rager. Bride was a member of the Catholic Church choir who drunkenly accidentally got pregnant with an old friend from college. The priest took the opportunity to preach instead of a homily, a eulogy to fallen moral values, and the end of the most magnificent innocence. Then the open bar was changed to cash bar after half an hour, which was too late to start the small riot that was brewing. One of the groomsmen wrote "baby on board" underneath the "just married" on the couple's car, which led to him getting a punch from the bride's uncle, and then a drunken cousin decided the best way to deal with the message was to kick the rear window in, which restarted the riot. The couple later divorced and split the kids up by gender. He took the boys and she took the girl. All at the same wedding. The groom doesn't show up until an hour late. The tuxedo does not fit him at all. The bride and groom's toddler son was allowed to play with a toy truck during the ceremony around the feet of the bridal party. At one point, he lifts the toy truck and slams it into the shin of one of the bridesmaids, drawing blood, and interrupting the proceedings for a good 10 minutes. Not to be outdone, the groom starts to look unwell. He passes out, falling down a small set of stairs. Upon regaining consciousness, he runs out of the small church out the back. 10 minutes go by, then 20. He returns with his tux shirt pulled out, unbuttoned, and wide open, bearing chest hair and a gut. He returns to the bride, and they finish the ceremony with him like that. I told this story in a different thread the other day, but I feel like it also applies here. A friend of mine caused some drama at her own wedding because she wasn't drinking champagne. A bunch of the older ladies on her side of the family noticed, and decided the only possible explanation was that she was hiding a pregnancy. They started pointing it out to anyone who would listen, even going so far as to say they see a little bump under her dress. I guess these family members weren't close enough to the couple to know two very important details. 1. The bride is a recovering alcoholic. She doesn't drink, ever. Not even at her own wedding. 2. The bride and groom had been trying to get pregnant for probably 2 years at that point, and were starting to be resigned to the fact that they wouldn't be able to have kids. This was eventually confirmed, but they did not know this at that time. My friend's wedding. His mother had a lot of mental health and addiction issues, and he was already iffy on inviting her, but his beautiful, kind bride didn't want him to ever have any regrets about not having his mother there. She showed up 25 minutes late. They had announced not to get in the way of photographers during the ceremony and to try not to have your phone out in the way. Well, she pulled out the biggest goddamn iPad I've ever seen in my life and blocked a videographer for a while. Then, When they got to the part of the ceremony where they were going to do the sand thing where you combine the two things of sand in a jar, she got up, pulling a giant Ziploc bag of rice from her way too huge purse and just baseball pitched it right into everyone's face. I'm talking hard, shrapnel. His sister looked just about ready to actually murder her. Bride and groom both disassociated and left their bodies and everybody else gasped audibly. Finally, another family member got up and very quickly ushered her away. Everyone was slipping and sliding on the way back down the aisle because there was so much rice all over the ground. We laugh now, but it was the most batshit crazy thing I've ever seen at a formal event. I used to work in a hotel conference center, so I saw a lot of weddings. One, the groom and best man got into a fistfight before the meal was even served. We never got told what exactly went down, but we did know from the catering staff that the groom had a bloody nose and got it all over the bride's dress, and she spent the rest of the night like that. The groom and best man made up not long after, and the party went on. Another time, a bride passed out in the bathroom. A coworker found her and roused her. She started sobbing, saying that she didn't love the groom and only married him because she was tired of being single. There was also a wedding outside in November. In Canada. Lastly, a bride was walking from her room to the wedding hall with her dad, and her dad was lecturing her about how it was her fourth wedding and he wasn't going to pay for any more, so this one better stick. At a friend's outdoor wedding in the summer, everyone was gathered, waiting for the ceremony to begin. The music started, and the bridal party began walking down the aisle. Everything went well until we all stood up for the bride to make her appearance and walk down the aisle. She did so, all eyes on her, except when she got to the altar, there was no groom in sight. It turned out that no one thought to notify the groom and groomsmen that the ceremony was about to begin, and they were smoking cigarettes around the corner. The bride was devastated. After several minutes of confusion, they decided to have a do-over for walking down the aisle, but it just felt weird, and you could feel the disappointment. About 15 years ago, I was at a wedding at Middlehead in Sydney, Australia. It was a fantastic location overlooking the entrance to Sydney Harbour. There had been storms on and off all day, but the rain disappeared for the ceremony. You could see the storm clouds out to sea, but it was sunny right where we were. The ceremony was like any standard ceremony, complete with that bit where the celebrant asks, "If anyone has any reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace." As soon as the celebrant did the pause after asking the question, there was an almighty boom of thunder. By far the loudest we'd heard all day. Everyone laughed about how God apparently didn't approve, but the ceremony continued and they were married. Anyway, they divorced less than 12 months later after she ran off with her football coach. I was a groomsman at my friend's wedding. At the reception afterwards, after everyone was jolly drunk, I happened into the bathroom and found the groom's college roommate and some random guest in a loud argument. Lots of, "You don't know me," being thrown around. I didn't give a fuck. I went into a stall, and when I came out, they were locked into an embrace and rolling around on the floor wrestling and screaming. I went right in to try to break it up and got pushed back. So I went into the main hall and tried to find the groom's brother to help me out. Finally found him. The random guest was now in the lobby and fighting another random guest while a bunch of people were gathered around. Brother ran into the fray, and I thought, shit, I'm going to need more, so I grabbed the groom. By the time we got to the fight, it had moved outside, and there was a big crowd now. The same guy was fighting, seemingly, everyone, and everyone was hurling insults. I saw the guy's girlfriend run off to her car. Groom and I went in to break everything up, and there ended up being a mosh pit. Another groomsman's wife got hit in the throat by a can of beer, causing the groomsman to fly into a rage. I ended up having to hold him back. Eventually, the guy's girlfriend drove over and dragged him into the car. She started driving off, and that could have been the end of it, but nope, some idiot had to throw out a racial slur. The guy opened the door on the moving car and rolled out and went right back into the crowd. It only ended when the groom's brother and another guy dragged the instigator out to his girlfriend's car, and he only got in because there were sirens approaching. This guy fought damn near the entire wedding on his own. I haven't had the most eventful life in terms of crazy stuff, but during one of my cousin's weddings, they planned to have the ceremony outside, but it started raining. The bride had an epic meltdown even though the wedding planner had prepared for it, and there was a giant tent for the ceremony. Yelling and screaming about how nothing she does ever works and everything is terrible. A thrown glass or two. Makes me glad we let our wedding be simple and fun instead of a monstrously complicated event where everything has to go perfectly. Great food, great guests, a good photographer, and drinks are all you need. At a childhood friend's wedding, another childhood friend, her brother's best friend, who has had some struggles over the years, was using drugs in the bathroom. My boyfriend saw, and as he came out to tell me, I looked over to see him reach over the bar to drag the bartender who had refused to serve him. Within 30 seconds, the entire groom's family had descended on the guy, resulting in a massive 40-person brawl that spilled out into the lobby of the catering hall. The bride's brother was punched in the face by a groomsman and had to be taken away by ambulance. The friend fled the party and was arrested at home. Former limo driver here, story time. It was the early 2000s, at the Lakeway Inn, which was at the time, a very pricey resort. I'm hired along with 2 other drivers to chauffeur the bride's party, and the groom's party is being chauffeured by my colleague. Everything is smooth on the way in. We pick up a big Spanish family, everyone is drinking casually, and my limo bar glassware is being used along with the ice I provided. We take the guests to the wedding, a nice affair, and we see there's a band performing, think Gypsy Kings style of music. Within 2 hours, everything is over, and we're supposed to carry them to a reception back in Lakeway. I have the bride and groom in my limo, driving on the road, along with the bride's mother and the groom's mother and other assorted family. I don't speak much Spanish, but all of a sudden, "Chinga tu madre," was said very loudly, followed by other loud screaming, and then the sound of a very expensive wine glass being broken, which is when I pulled over the limo and proceeded to yell furiously at this wedding party for being possibly violent drunken assholes, letting them know that no one was getting stabbed in my car. Apparently, he grabbed a bridesmaid's ass or something repulsive during the ceremony, causing mass chaos. So after we sat on the side of the road for a brief minute and I collected all of the glassware, I proceeded to take them back to the hotel. Once we get there, the groom tries to stiff me for the ride, and I remind him how prepaying works and that I'm not going to be mad that he hasn't tipped me yet either. The bride's family tells him a thing or two, so he leaves in his Porsche 911 speeding down the road. I knew this wasn't going to end well for him because Lakeway is notorious for speeding enforcement. Sure enough, a few minutes later, on my way out, I pass by a Spanish gentleman being arrested for speeding on the side of the road by 2 Lakeway cops. I would have warned him about these cops had he tipped me, but alas. I would brag that I saved someone from being stabbed that night, but really, I just didn't want to clean up any mess in that clean limo. My boss would have killed me. Gracias por ver el video. No te olvides de darle like y suscribirse a nuestro canal para no perderte de las mejores historias de Reddit.